and I hope you've had an enjoyable and much needed break over the festive period and are looking forward to what we can achieve together in the new year. And like Councillor Bailey has already said, thank you, Councillor Fletcher, for the refreshments and the kindness and hospitality you've shown in the break in celebration of what I understand will be a really important birthday tomorrow. So many happy returns for your birthday tomorrow. But before we begin formally our council address and proceedings, I'd like to pay my respects to the commitment, to the work and the memory of Councillor Peter Connor. Peter was an exceptionally dedicated and much loved councillor, championing many causes for those often greatest in need in our city. He led the way for many years in housing and later in adult social care, laying the foundations which has helped so many across our city. Peter was well respected by his fellow councillors here in this chamber and also in the ward of Kersal and the community of Kersal that he served for many years, with great commitment to the Jewish community there and the broader community of Kersal. Peter was always someone you could approach in the knowledge that he'll help in any which way he could to the best of his abilities, often being passionate about those suffering poverty, inequality, or those feeling disenfranchised in some way or another, committed ultimately to improving the lives of the people of our city. Peter, in many respects, encapsulated what we often refer to as the spirit of Salford. And he will be deeply missed. And my thoughts and our thoughts and prayers remain obviously with Mary and Peter's family and his friends at this really sad and often difficult time. I'd also like to welcome Councillor Damien Bailey to the City Council, and I'd like to congratulate you and the residents of Pendlebury for supporting a Labour councillor. We've already heard from yourself about standing in the shoes of Councillor John Ferguson. Those are indeed big shoes to be standing in, and we expect great things from you, Councillor Bailey. Damien's election in many respects is testament to the value that the people of Salford place in the Labour Party in this city, and I look forward, and my mayoral team looks forward to working with you in the interests of the people of this city. And it's quite clear to me that Damien's already hit the ground running, asking a question of lead member in his inaugural full council meeting, so you are certainly following in Councillor Ferguson's footsteps. So thank you very much and welcome to this City Council. Now, it would be safe to say that the results of the election on December the 12th were not what I, nor many in this chamber, would have anticipated or wished for. Although we retained our seats in Salford, many long-standing Labour areas in Greater Manchester and the north of England changed hands in a historic night which has changed the face of British politics. And although I personally viewed the result with great sadness, there are some comments I'd like to make and certainly reflect and take away from that. Firstly, the people of this country voted for Brexit, and they confirmed to us on the 12th that the results of the referendum must and shall be adhered to. Brexit will happen. It'll have profound and in many cases challenging implications for our economy, our society. But it is the democratic will of this nation which must be respected. And secondly, I'll be frank. My party's campaign, in my opinion, could have been better organised and more effectively communicated, with a clear narrative, a clear structure around our manifesto. And for me, who's responsible for that? Well, clearly the party's machinery, the Labour Party, the leader's office, and how that then is cascaded up and down the country. And for me, what this does is it necessitates serious reflection, listening and consideration for future potential leaders of my party, but also for party members and also the broader movement. We must listen to each other, listen to the broader Labour movement, and listen, more importantly, to the people of this country in how we move forward. And lastly, voters in the north of England and many other post-industrial areas of the country are clearly feeling left out, disenfranchised, and arguably rightfully angry. The anger must be understood, in my opinion, and understood by all parties. It is very real pain that people are feeling, whose prospects and life chances they feel have often been cut short. And I believe that the Labour Party's manifesto had some of the answers to the issues that we're facing here in the United Kingdom. Our Green New Deal would have brought environmentally sustainable industrial growth back to the country, especially those post-industrial parts of the country that have been suffering for many, many years. And based on a strategic approach to infrastructure-led development. And when I talk about infrastructure-led development, I'm not just talking about the physical there. It's about thinking about how the social, the economic, and the environmental interact in terms of the interplay between people and the physical environment we all inhabit. And our National Investment Bank would have provided vital funds available for industries to upskill, to update, and find new capital for their plants, technology, research and development, and innovation. And our infrastructural investment programme would have put money into roads, schools and hospitals and transport in these regions to enable prosperity and growth to return. But it remains to be said that Labour lost these people by continuing what I feel was a national trend in politics, of London-centric politics, which began under Thatcher, intensified under Blair, and has been continued by every administration since. This is an exclusionary, it's an elitist form of politics which has excluded many people from public life, culturally, organisationally, and politically. It's a politics, ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, that must end. London, as we all know, is important economically and industrially to the success of Britain. But so too are many cities, many towns, many villages and communities outside of London and the South East. And rebalancing the economy and reforming our political system requires decisive action, not just warm words or political rhetoric. Boris Johnson has made many promises to the people of these areas. Promises which I'm sceptical as to whether or not they'll be delivered and kept. And with early indications from the first few months suggesting that U-turns are already being planned in many key areas. The date of the planned Brexit is already being delayed, and discussions of the transition period being extended is on the table. The mastermind behind the Vote Leave campaign, this was the campaign which lied to the British public saying we would be getting £350 million extra per week into our NHS, obviously spearheaded by Dominic Cummings, has already been seen on Twitter discussing with Dr. Alan Green, conceding that there are lots of things that could happen or not happen, as may be the case, which would make him, that's Dominic Cummings, wish Leave had not actually won the referendum. Johnson's proposals to end the legislative alignment of Britain and the EU could lead to this being dragged into a conflict in the House of Lords. We believe that the proposals in the current withdrawal agreement passed by Parliament would force courts up and down the country to reinterpret all case law, creating legal chaos in our country. And from pledging during his campaign the chance of no deal was absolutely zero, recent comments from the Prime Minister in his first interview of the new year suggest that no deal is in fact still a very real possibility. We are still faced with vague promises on social care, with no dates for the promised reforms that were pledged during the election. We know in this chamber still no green paper, and yet again, government forcing councils up and down this country to hike the adult social care precept by 2% again to pay for social care. In addition to that, I would just say be cautious about what you're reading in the press and the media. Colleagues may have seen the BBC reporting that Swinton is to receive £25 million from the government. I just want to inform this council chamber that that certainly is not the case. I, nor the chief executive of this local authority, have had no indication that Swinton, in terms of reviving the town centre, is to receive £25 million. What I understand is happening is they are offering support and help. So we will continue to engage with the department on this, but I just want colleagues in this chamber to be aware that, BBC running headlines saying that Swinton is to receive £25 million, as far as I'm concerned, is very, very misleading and concerning. There has been no numbers set on the promised investment, as we've already heard, in northern infrastructure and investment in the north of England. And I welcome the government's ending of the Northern Rail franchise, given their sustained underperformance, which has been a matter of public record and regularly reported on through our combined authority here in Greater Manchester. But the idea that simply extending the franchise to another company without significantly upgrading and investing in infrastructure as some sort of panacea to solve the problems is misleading at best. And Jake Berry's, the Northern Powerhouse Minister's insistence that Transport for the North and Andy Burnham share the blame for the failure of Northern after their repeated insistence over many years that government and Northern were failing and we need intervention is nothing short of shameful reinvention of recent history. And government's policy of revoking the huge successful policy of citywide landlord licensing in Liverpool has had a chilling impact on Greater Manchester's plans to properly regulate our private rented sector, protecting tenants and challenging the Dickensian housing conditions that continue to blight and plague millions of our residents in the city region and thousands up and down the country. The value of such promises from the current government, in my opinion, is yet to be seen. Meanwhile, rather than obviously wait around for the government for such promises to materialise, we've been busy here in this council doing what we do best, fighting for the interests of the people of Salford. And it was my pleasure last week to open Route 29, the new care scheme for young people and those on the edge of care, which has been co-designed by young people who've been through the care system or had direct experiences of services in the city. The scheme has seen us provide a fabulous new facility, including a gym and recreational areas for young people who could have potentially been placed outside of our city. The scheme has seen several carers, care leavers and carers, the people involved in the care system, actually go on to employment as well. 2 individuals have gained employment through this initiative, using their own direct experiences of the care system and our services to help shape the experiences of other people in our city. This is a heartwarming story, and it's a perfect example of innovative and creative work that we've been doing in our city, whilst also helping us with budgetary pressures and representing value for money for our taxpayers in our city. It was also my pleasure yesterday to join in announcing that Islington Mill, the arts and cultural hub off Chapel Street, has been awarded more funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, £746,000, to secure the much needed renovations. Our shared vision is for the mill complex, which includes New Islington Mill as well, the building adjacent, and parts of Regent's Trading Estate, placed into the hands of a community land trust or an appropriate governance structure through which rents will be set by tenants, supporting creatives, makers, people in our city which are often disenfranchised as a consequence of gentrification. Salford has always been a working city, and protecting low rents and that low rent environment is much needed for artists and creatives to survive in places like Greater Manchester. Interestingly, this was responded to in London's local plan, because they realised they were losing that creative talent to places like Paris and Berlin, and they placed it at the heart of some of their planning policies to positively respond to those challenges. But for me, I think this is a really very exciting development, and I look forward to working with Odsal councillors and the community there at Islington Mill to realise what is a fantastic initiative. The city's green agenda also continues at pace, with Friends of the Earth announcing that Salford is the most climate-friendly local authority area in the whole of the Northwest, and we're actually joint 5th in the whole of the country. So we're doing absolutely fantastic things here to receive that recognition from Friends of the Earth. And this is no surprise when you consider we've managed to lever in, it's not the City Council spending this on its own, £126 million worth of investment over the past 4 years into green infrastructure within our city. Investment which has seen the creation of hundreds of miles of cycle paths, new parks, River Irwell's second flood basin, huge projects like RHS Bridgewater, the 5th National Park, coming to the city of Salford, the preservation of Mossland and the renovation of many of our existing green spaces and parks across the city. And we continue to defend areas of natural beauty, such as the Broadoak site that was previously referenced from future development. And obviously we're disappointed that more public money will need to be spent continuing to defend our position in the Court of Appeal. And this is after, as colleagues know, this City Council has lost £211 million in cuts since 2010 and unfunded budget pressures. 53% of the grant we get from central government has been taken away from us since 2010 under the Tory and Lib Dem and Tory governments, whilst at the same time demands for children's and adult services continue to grow in our city. We're also committed to plans for the creation of a huge 350-hectare city forest park, and that's between both Salford City Council, Bolton and Bury. A further project to protect the preservation of natural woodland and wildlife in our city region. This green revolution, if you like, in Salford is the culmination of decades-long commitment to a green agenda, for which we are now starting to see the results. And last year, as colleagues know, we honoured the ex-serviceman Ben Walsworth with Freedom of the City, and we acknowledged his commitment to the green agenda in this city, which demonstrates the long-standing commitment of this local authority to that agenda. It was Ben's vision for open green spaces and parklands that has seen us protect, preserve and expand green provision over the course of decades, including the development of Cutacre Park, and our pioneering legal work preventing peat extraction and ensuring net biodiversity in developments. This revolution is not only opening new spaces for residents, but it's helping to preserve the city's heritage, as encapsulated in the marvellous redevelopment of the Worsley, Delph and Canal completed recently. As the national political agenda continues to evolve, many things remain to be the same, and we are in a period of real uncertainty. And in that space, Salford is still doing all it can to ensure that residents of this city have jobs to go to, things to see and do, and more importantly, hope for the future. Thank you very much.